The poll question for today's show centers in on something that we're going to talk about on today's show. Would you trade Jalen Reagor for D'Ernest Johnson, the backup running back for the Cleveland Browns? Let me know in the comment section by typing a Y for yes or an N for no. Get those votes in, and let's start today's show. What's good, Philly? Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. Hope all of you are having a great day, and we have an awesome show on tap for you. And it's all sponsored by Mint Mobile. On America's largest 5G network, Mint Mobile has cell phone plans starting as low as $15 per month. You saving money just as beautiful as a Jalen Hurts deep ball floating into the awaiting hands of A.J. Brown. Start saving money today by heading to mintmobile.com/chatsports. I'll put that link in the comment section and the description of this video. What we're talking about on today's show is what's hot on the streets. Did Jalen Reagor hint on Twitter that a trade is about to go down? And also, there's some rumors out there on the internet that two teams are interested in him. We have a good idea that one team that's interested in him. As for what the other is, we'll speculate. Before we dive into all of the latest Jalen Reagor rumors, going to be doing a watch party Saturday night against the Miami Dolphins for this preseason finale, the first ever watch party in the history of Philadelphia Eagles Now. Live play-by-play, great audience interaction. Can't wait to chop it up with all of Philadelphia. We'll be drinking beers, shotgunning beers, taking shots. When we say watch party, we put the party into watch party. It all goes down about 15 minutes prior to kickoff for our pregame show. We'll be live during the game as well as after the game. The Dolphins 1-point favorites, but who cares? Before we get to Jalen Reagor one more time, though, we do have a Dolphins channel under the Chat Sports umbrella hosted by my boy, Will Scott. What I want you to do right now is head over to Miami Dolphins Today, and you see this video thumbnail here? I want you to click on that video, then get into the comment section and show the Miami Dolphins fans that they're fraudulent, that they don't mess around or come close to Philadelphia Eagles fans. Here at Chat Sports, I wear Philadelphia on my back. I represent the city that I hail from, and I want you to back that up by commenting "Fly Eagles Fly" on that video on Dolphins Today to show Will Scott you can't mess around with Philadelphia. And if you have to get violent in the comment section, that's what we as Philadelphians do. Do that for me. I'm going to go back to see how many responses we get on that Dolphins video. To Jalen Reagor finally. So he tweeted this out on Wednesday. Just that icon. ... It's the hourglass. What does that mean? And does it mean that Jalen Reagor has a good idea and a good indication that he's going to get traded soon? Well, something else happened that I thought was pretty interesting. New Eagles safety Jaquiski Tartt, who I think is a really good backup viable safety on this Eagles roster for Jonathan Gannon, had tweeted this out as well, saying, "When you know your worth, stand on it." Well, Jalen Reagor quote tweeted that and said, "Real shit." So does Jalen Reagor not think that the Eagles are valuing him? And with the hourglass tweet, does he think that a trade is about to go down so that he can finally get a fresh start, get out of Philadelphia, where he's had a really difficult tenure up to this point since being that first-round pick a couple of years ago, so that he can start anew with a new franchise? With Jalen Reagor, you really get the sense that it's best for both sides to move on. And for Jalen Reagor, I think that he did hint that a trade was coming. And I think he just needs a new change of scenery. Everything hasn't gone his way since getting drafted ahead of Justin Jefferson in the draft a couple of years ago. And going back to this entire conversation with Reagor, you know, he was a first-round pick, but businesses pivot off of bad hires if they need to. That's the reality of how well-run businesses do operate. So I understand if Howie Roseman's like, I don't know, man. We drafted Jalen Reagor in the first round. We want to see if he can work out. He's going into a critical year. He's had a better training camp. Can we find a way to bring the best out of this player and maximize his skill set? Maybe. But if he's not benefiting your football team, cut the fat, move on, cut your losses, and maybe there's a different player on this roster like a Deon Cain who might be able to be more impactful of a player this year as compared to Jalen Reagor. And you take a look at the Reagor road since he was drafted out of TCU. The pick to start was a reach. Now, I looked at the film at the time. I saw his special teams and return ability and the explosion after the catch. He also was a pretty good deep ball receiver as well. We haven't seen any of that translate to the NFL level. And then he was picked over Justin Jefferson, who is arguably a top 5 wide receiver in the league at a position group that is extremely deep with some really premier players at that position. And Reagor, when he's been on the field, hasn't popped at all. Not only has the production not been there, the eye test, he hasn't been able to pass that. And last year, failed his physical going into a critical year for him, which made matters worse. I understand he was dealing with the tragic loss of a really good friend, and those losses have continued for him. Jeff Gladney is a player who he played with TCU with, and he passed away just a couple of months ago as well. So Jalen Reagor certainly hasn't had a difficult start to his NFL career, but also you got to put those things aside. And when it comes time to produce in the National Football League, when you're a first-round pick, you're getting paid that much money, you got to produce at the end of the day. And I think over the last couple of years, he's really struggled with the mental rigors of playing in Philadelphia. It's not for everybody, as we know. The real ones can play in Philly. The fraudulent ones, they cannot. You take a look at what Reagor's been able to do year by year. 2020, a huge disappointment. 11 games played, 31 catches, 396 yards, only a touchdown. And then last year, honestly, not much better. He did play in every single game, 17 of them. That's great. But still, 33 catches, 299 yards, average yards per catch, just over 9. No explosiveness. He wasn't sure-handed as a punt returner either. That's the problem with Jalen Reagor. Had good training camp? Yeah. But can that translate to the game field? It hasn't. And I don't have a lot of confidence that it is going to translate to the game field to benefit this Eagles air attack. What would you do with Jalen Reagor? Let me know once more in the comment section. Give me a T for trade, a C for cut, or a K for keep. Put your Howie hat on, and you make this roster decision for me. As I mentioned off the top of the show, Philadelphia Eagles now sponsored by our friends at Mint Mobile. Just another great sponsor that we have here under the Chat Sports umbrella. If you head to mintmobile.com/chatsports, you can start saving money today with these unlimited premium wireless plans that begin as low as $15 a month. That's right, as low as $15 per month. Unlimited talk and text. You can switch seamlessly between 5G and 4G. What's also really cool about Mint Mobile, they'll send you these digital eSIM cards so you don't have to waste your time by actually going to a physical store. You also don't have to change your phone number, and you don't have to change your physical phone. One more time, it's mintmobile.com/chatsports. I'll put that link in the comment section and the description of this video. If it came down to what Ruben Frank would do, whether or not to keep Jalen Reagor, he thinks that the Eagles should just move on. Here's what he had to say on NBC Sports Philadelphia, the statistician extraordinaire that is Rube. Jalen Reagor hasn't had an awful training camp, but it would be a mistake to keep him over Deon Cain. What you saw on Sunday afternoon against the Browns is what Cain has been doing all summer. Back-to-back gains of 24 and 23 yards on contested catches from Gardner Minshew in the second quarter. He finished for 5 grabs, 66 yards. Has great size at 6'2", 200. He's got some experience. Started 6 games for the Colts and Steelers back in 2019, and he's by far the best of the next group behind DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Quez, Watkins, and Zach Pascal, who I think is very underrated. He's just better than Reagor, and it's not close. And what we've seen is Deon Cain make it happen on the field in between the lines, and Reagor has done it on the practice field, but not in between the lines. And I think that Cain has something really, really special. It's the size that you can't teach and the ball skills that Reagor doesn't have, and the big-bodied rebounding threat who can go up and get it. That's something that the Eagles haven't had. They have it with A.J. Brown. Why not have another guy like that in Deon Cain? And is it a bad football decision to keep Jalen Reagor on this roster over Cain? If the answer to that question is yes, then it's time to just cut your losses, get over the fact that Jalen Reagor was a first-round pick. You've seen the eye test and him not pass it. Deon Cain, on the other hand, has been producing throughout training camp in the preseason. If he's the better player, I don't care that he was drafted in the 6th round and he's popped around a couple of different teams. If he's better than Reagor, keep Cain over Reagor, because this is a team that's well-positioned to compete to win the NFC East and make a playoff run. And you need to maximize your roster in any way that you can, and I believe that Howie Roseman Bozeman will do just that. Next up, we'll actually get to those Jalen Reagor trade rumors. Which teams are interested? If there's one. Also, is there a player that the Eagles could get back? I kind of mentioned his name a little bit earlier, but did you forget? We're about to break it down. But first, make sure you subscribe to the channel. YouTube.com/Eagles Now. I took over the channel this week. It has been an absolute blast. Videos every single day. Watch party on Saturday. We're going to continue to keep it rolling and keep it moving. So I saw this tweet on Wednesday from NFL Rooms, and you always take a tweet from NFL Rooms with a grain of salt. They're like the peak aggregator on social media, and oftentimes their reports don't end up ringing true, but for this, it's very, very interesting, right? Philadelphia Eagles have had two teams contact them concerning Jalen Reagor over the past week. What are those teams? Well, we know that the Cleveland Browns have too many running backs on the roster and a need at wide receiver. They also have the most cap space in the National Football League to take on and absorb the contract of Jalen Reagor. Could the Browns be one of those teams? I think they are, if that report to my right is actually true. Well, The Athletic put together a 53-man roster projection for Cleveland, and within that article, they pitched a Jalen Reagor for Deon Johnson trade that would just be a player-for-player swap. Reagor to Cleveland for a fresh start, and then the Eagles get to bulk up that backfield with Deon Johnson. And here's what The Athletic had to say about that proposed deal. The deepest position on the team and the deepest running back in the NFL gives the Browns options as they assess both their roster and potential trade options. When it comes to Hunt and Deon Johnson, the Browns won't make a trade just to make one. However, I think the state of the receiving core makes a trade necessary. And I've always believed that Johnson would be easier to trade than Hunt, given that Johnson has a much lower salary and less mileage. It's going to be an interesting week, and for this exercise, I'm projecting that the Browns trade Johnson to the Eagles in exchange for Jalen Reagor. And with this backfield, we've talked about it throughout this week. Do you trade for Kareem Hunt? Do you sign a player like Kenyon Drake? I'm out on Hunt because he's a little bit too expensive. Salary cap hit of $6.2 million. But for Deon Johnson, he's not all that expensive, and I think he's a pretty quality player. And right now, there are injury questions with Miles Sanders, and that continues to really be the weight that holds Miles Sanders down throughout his NFL career. He'll reel off a 75-yard run. Next week, you don't know if there's a soft tissue injury. And at practice in Miami Gardens today, John Clark had reported that there's a massive wrap on his hamstring, and he's still not practicing. So if that soft tissue injury becomes a concern, do you bulk up your backfield and bring in another depth piece in Deon Johnson, who went right down the throat of that Eagles defense back last weekend in that second preseason game? Last year, I thought the DJ was really, really solid for what The Athletic called the deepest backfield in the NFL. I kind of agree with it. 100 carries, 534 yards, average yards per carry north of 5 with 3 tutties. I'm not saying that he'd come in and supplant Miles Sanders as a starting running back for this team, but could he be a good depth piece while still not stepping on the toes of Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, two players who I really like? I actually wouldn't mind exploring this trade. One more time, I do want to ask you this. What would you do with Jalen Reagor? Give me a T for trade, C for cut, K for keep. I just appreciate all of your football knowledge in the comment section, so let me know right now. And before I hop on out of here, since I'm new to the channel, it's been awesome to take over Philadelphia Eagles Now. To interact with all of you in the comment section has been just a luxury of mine. Let's interact even more. You can hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at Chase_Senior. The social media handle is the same on both platforms, and keep it locked on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Videos coming every day, and then a watch party live here on Eagles Now coming up on Saturday against the Dolphins.